Before we get into today's video, if you're someone who's interested in retro-modded consoles like Game Boy Colors, Game Boy SPs, or Game Boy Advances, we have them all at privateclubcollective.com. We even have over 30 t-shirts like this one right here. You can get one for yourself or for a loved one at privateclubcollective.com. Now let's head into the video. In the 1960s, at the height of the space race, the Soviet Union was desperate to beat the United States to the stars. But what if they already had? What if, hidden within classified files and intercepted radio signals, were the voices of astronauts lost in space, their final moments erased from history? We know Yuri Gagarin as the first man in space, or at least the first official man in space, but rumors persist that he was not the first, only the first to return. November 1960, two Italian brothers, Achille and Giovanni, who were amateur radio operators, claimed to have intercepted a chilling transmission. It wasn't a triumph announcement of Soviet success, but a terrified voice pleading for help. A distorted female voice speaking Russian was intercepted with static. Her voice was translated to, "It's getting hot, too hot, I can see the fire. Am I going to crash? I feel so alone." Was this the voice of a cosmonaut doomed upon re-entry into our atmosphere? A woman the USSR never admitted sending into space. Officially, the Soviet Union only acknowledged space missions that succeeded, but reports surfaced of failed missions erased from history. One name appears over and over again: Vladimir Ilyushin. Some believe Ilyushin was the first man in space, but his mission went horribly wrong. Some say he crash-landed in China and was quietly imprisoned. Others claim he never returned at all. The Soviet government denied everything. No records, no explanations, just silence. But the most terrifying theory? Some believe that cosmonauts are still out there, orbiting Earth in broken vessels, their bodies frozen, forever circling our planet and just silently waiting. In 2011, a group of astronomers claimed to detect an unknown metallic object orbiting the Earth, one that didn't match any known satellite records, a forgotten capsule, or something else. The USSR never acknowledged the lost cosmonauts. To them, only heroes returned. The failures, they never existed, but the whispers remain. Transmissions cut short, distress calls lost in the void, and the unsettling knowledge that somewhere out in space, ghosts may still be listening. Were the lost cosmonauts real, or just another Soviet myth? Well, the truth may never return. Now, to tie this all up, I'd just like to give my own personal thoughts on this, and really, I have always found the space race between the US and the Soviet Union very interesting. We know the Soviet Union is known to cover up deaths and have unreported deaths. There was even a rocket that had blown up and killed 100 engineers and military personnel, and they covered that up, or just downplayed it at least. There was also a mission in 1959, I believe, where they sent an astronaut, theoretically or conspiratorially speaking, they sent an astronaut to the lunar surface of the moon, and he had crash landed there, and they were unable to get him back. And you could be thinking, how could they not get him back? Well, to be fair, when they were testing flights to space, they had sent a dog into the space capsule and just wanted to see if they could send a living being into space, and had no intentions getting the dog back. So this kind of puts you in the mindset of how the Soviet Union was operating. Like I mentioned before, they were only concerned about successes and only speaking of successes, and the failures were just put underneath the rug. But something that's very interesting that I found that could be likely connected to the transmission that the two Italian brothers got and this orbiting metallic object that wasn't known in any space routes, it's satellite routes. But before the International Space Station, also known as ISS, there was a short-term habitation space station that was made by the Soviet Union called Zvezda, and they sent it out into space, and this space station did house a few astronauts, cosmonauts, and they never returned. Of course, this was something that was downplayed by the Soviet Union because they're only concerned with success stories, but this may have been the remnants of that space station that the metallic object that was in orbit was a part of. And maybe even some of these transmissions they were picking up could have been from some of those astronauts that were maybe trying to make their way back into Earth and unfortunately burned up in the atmosphere. Now, I'd also like to give some credit to the two Italian brothers because while their credibility is always in question because they have no verifiable proof of these transmissions, they did pick up Sputnik 1's transmissions, which is, of course, we all know is the publicly available successful mission of the USSR. But before the female pleading for help about flames, heat, and suffocation, there were other transmissions, such as in November of 1960, there was a cosmonaut reportedly begging for help because his capsule was drifting further and further from Earth, and unfortunately his fate remains unknown. Also beforehand, before that one at least, in May of 1960, there was another cosmonaut who was struggling for breath, asking for help as well, and unfortunately all they heard was his breathing get quieter and quieter until it hit silence. Now, the only reason why I bring this up is because whether they're true or not, it's really incredible to think that people sacrifice their lives in the face of space exploration, and you really have to not just give credit to the people who picked up the transmissions, but the people who had done the sacrifice themselves. If you like content like this, be sure to like and subscribe, and comment what other videos you would like to see in the future. Until next time, thank you for watching.